My name's David Yarnton. I'm the chairman of UKIE's eSports subgroup, and UKIE is the United Kingdom Interactive Entertainment Association. It's the trade body for the video games here in the UK, and they represent all publishers, hardware manufacturers. There's a lot of universities members, so it's a very, very broad church, developers as well, and we have an eSports subgroup to look at eSports. So we felt that sometime there's been a lot of interest in eSports, and people have it's sort of a hot topic at the moment, I suppose, in media, and there's sort of a lot of traditional sports businesses are looking at eSports as well. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity to try and explain really what it's all about to people from brands and agencies, etc., and probably looks like a few other people in the games industry as well that still don't know a little bit about eSports. I'd like to thank Deborah for organising tonight. She's put it all together, been cracking the whip on everyone, and also obviously Space Ape for putting the night on and hosting it, providing all the beer and the food, and putting the event on. But Deb's going to run it tonight, so keep in charge of things and keeping everyone under control. So over to you. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, Dave. I also want to give a quick shout out to Sam at the back because he helped organize. Thanks, Sam. There we go. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming. We're really pleased to have you all here. The way tonight is going to run, the lovely James from ESL is going to do an intro, do a little bit of an eSports 101 for you guys. After that, that'll be followed by a panel where we'll talk about some success stories in branding, and then after that we'll do a series of sort of rapid fire talks. The panel's going to be followed by a Q&A, and then at the end of the night you guys are free to sort of have some drinks, have some nibbles, and network a little bit. So yeah, without further ado, I think I'll hand it over to James if you want to kick us off.
Thank you. Right, so eSports in 10 minutes is very difficult. So you're going to about see a few slides that are probably a compilation of about 50 slides I've compressed down. So you have to bear with me. All right, so the ecosystem. So we've talked about pyramids for forever. And I've used some example tournaments there. I'd like to have that disclosure, because obviously some of those logos are ours. But what I want to talk about is the fact that eSports starts from a grassroots. Super, super important. It doesn't start top down, it starts from a huge player base. And as we ride that ladder, if you like, the players are getting better and better, they're playing in the game, they're looking at the internal ladders within the game, and then they'll start jumping on platforms such as our own ESL Play or ESEA or Badline, etc., and our national leagues, etc. And then we reach the top, that's the Pro League, and that's when we're looking at that global audience, and that's where we have teams like Fnatic, for example, and in between there's a whole rift of things in between. So, this is the important thing, is the fact that the arrow is only one way, it's up. It starts grassroots, it goes to the top, and that's when we start seeing the success of the brand from a viewership perspective. So on that pro level, large viewership. On the grassroots level, we're talking about a large player base, and then there's a kind of sliding scale in between. And what's really important is that a game doesn't have to reach that top level. A game can go anywhere above that line, and it can stay there. It can live very happily with a medium player base and a medium viewership. And that's a sustainable ecosystem for everyone. And we've seen lots and lots of examples of that as the industry expands. This is the key, the width of that grassroots level. The wider that grassroots community, the more successful that eSport is going to be. So commercial stakeholders, I'm going to run through this really, really quickly. So game publishers, that's where the buck stops. Let's face it, basically they're selling the games, that's why eSports was created in a way. It was a marketing tool to get user retention and game sales. Licensing is in yellow because it's kind of a newer area for game publishers to start realizing the value for their IP in a viewership space. So they're starting to monetize. You can see the top right, licensing, merchandising, advertising, sponsorship, endorsements, and content rights. Tournament operators, now licensing kind of used to shift towards our side as a tournament operator. That's all balancing. And also another clarity here is that as I go through these stakeholders, the balance really shifts between all of those stakeholders. So per game, you'll find that the monetizing aspect of that game will shift amongst the organisations involved. Pro teams, obviously, that's a symbiotic relationship with the operation and also the publishers, and then the pro players and talent. They're in yellow because, most importantly, these are the only stakeholders in this whole ecosystem that are actually part of the community. They are the guys who actually effectively help create what we see as an esport. Media outlets and sponsorship, so that's why hopefully there are brands in the room. This is super important, obviously very, very important in terms of the revenues coming into monetizing that content. Although we've got examples where games do work as an esport without necessarily sponsorship, it is super important still as part of that growth. Other IPs, a yellow spot there, established sponsors. I'm talking about people like Intel, for example. They've been around for so long in the industry, they've actually created their own IP within the esports ecosystem, which has its own value, and they actually license that in its own right in many different ways. And then the service channels, lots of other industries getting involved in the industry and help servicing and help growing the industry as a whole. But most importantly, this entire thing is driven by community. All the support and the money comes from the community, and without the community, it wouldn't happen. How am I doing for time? Good. Okay, this is an important one. So this is some Newzoo stats. Right now, we're looking at $500 million-ish size industry. That will rise by 2020 to 1.5. What's most important is that blue column there, which is basically sponsorship. So we're actually identifying that the viewership is what's driving that. And if we look top right there, that little graph, it's a graph from eSports Connect. It shows that the media rights industry, the sports industry, it's actually very large, it's still growing. The UK has got a good chunk of that. So we can see there's a huge opportunity. We've started to see some publishers really monetize that, the ML BAM deal, the stuff that Overwatch are doing right now. I think we start seeing a lot more of that sort of style of business. And yeah, 30% year on year is quite impressive. So the market growth, 2.2 billion gamers right now. We're looking at 5% increase year on year as millennial audience start realizing that gaming is the future. 150 million esports enthusiasts, that's people who follow one tournament a month roughly, and that we're seeing a viewership growth of about 15% year on year. And this is an interesting one, it's the monetization of the actual fan itself. And we're not talking about the amount of money they pay for the game itself, but it's actually monetizing them as a viewer. So, for example, content rights, and at events, etc. And we're expecting that to grow. If you saw on the last slide there, in the sports industry, it's about $68 per fan. So there's a huge gap in a way around that, but we don't necessarily see that change massively because this millennial audience are used to free content. They've already paid into that game. They've already bought what they're viewing. So it's an interesting area. Engagement, best practice. Firstly, knowing your game. I don't think I need to tell that to many people in this room. Obviously, authenticity is number one. It's a very close-knit community. They know what they're doing. They can sniff anyone out that don't. Gaming is ultimately a passion. There's a deep-rooted lore behind that in terms of aspects of the players, the play, the online communities, the way they communicate with each other. To break that community is super hard. Break into that community, sorry. And it's important that any activity you do by engaging with this fan base is in best intentions of that community. And we're seeing that the biggest successes, and I've got an example in a second, that we actually get a very positive result if we do have their best intentions with providing a service or something similar. How do we do that? We find that collaborating is the best way, working with other brands, game publishers directly, working with tournament operators obviously, and lots of other of those stakeholders that you saw earlier, in terms of really figuring out, well, what does the community need? If we can help the community, then that's probably the best way we can engage. If you don't do that, it probably won't work. Empowering the community is super important. The community love to decide. With countless examples where the community really do steer the program as much as they can. They make that decision. That's a reason why we see $21 million prize pool for Dota 2 at the International, is because that community feels empowered to actually make that happen. So we're going to see a lot more of that over the future, and that's effectively also why games actually become an esport as well, because they feel like they are empowered, the publishers are listening to them, they're adapting their games to their needs, and everything fits together. And finally, embracing the memes. It's super, super important. This is a language they speak. It's about permeating the culture. It's an inside joke. It's kind of an unsaid word. And it's a way of really finding an acceptance. And I'll go on to that example. How are we doing?
Oh, you've still got like 5.
Great, okay, I'll slow down a little bit.
Don't do that.
Okay, so Mercedes, we recently worked with Mercedes at ESL 1 Hamburg. It was the first activation of its kind. And this is what we were presented with. It was a worldwide campaign. Mercedes decided to tell everyone to grow up. Now, as many of you probably realise, telling a gaming community to grow up is probably the worst thing you can do. And this is what we did. So just a few examples. So we had product placement in the actual arena. So a car there with a massive grow up sign on the side of it. Analysis desk. So that was where some of the talent were able to just broadcast. Mercedes-Benz also made trucks. So hey, that's quite cool. Car with a massive grow up on the front of it. And then the MVP vote. So the MVP of the tournament, it was voted via Twitter. We had a special Twitter bot created, which worked through a DM. It worked really well. There was, from memory, it was about 20,000 votes. And effectively, the winner won a €50,000 Mercedes, which was great. I don't think he sort of had his hand in his pocket. He couldn't quite understand what to do about that situation. The player cards were great. Each team had a car to kind of personally chaperone them around the venue and back to the hotel, etc. They're all branded up. We used that a lot for creating content for the stream itself. For example, driving up to the venue when they were actually arriving to go on stage, etc. And something really quite unique was the draft stage of Dota 2 here, where we completely rebranded it Mercedes. So this is sort of typical. You can't really see it very well there, but it's kind of like the dashboard of a Mercedes car and all the Mercedes fonts, etc. Quite unique. So this is what happened. We start seeing the memes created. So the community actually went out there and started creating these themselves, some Dota characters with Mercedes logos, some of the Virtus Pro players in their Mercedes. I'm sure that was probably animated with them bouncing up and down. This is my favourite, Volvo, obviously a nickname for Valve. And they're saying, right, we've got a new friend, Mercedes logo. We'll see how that goes. This is quite a funny one, sort of a joke about the fact that everyone was referring to this all-new Mercedes-Benz E400 sedan, and people just took that to an extreme. Hero concepts, so someone made Mercedes the Benz Dota character. I love this for ESL Germany. Obviously a German guy. And then also, obviously, the superpower of a Dota character. They're just playing around with the names. All over Reddit as well, we started to see people just literally copy and paste the entire marketing speak for the Mercedes, just for fun. I think that they were obviously taking the mick a little bit about the fact that they're being fed this information, but instead of saying this is ridiculous, they were embracing that. They were saying, well, actually, these guys are coming in, they're helping us out, they're supporting the community. Let's take the piss out of it. So we saw as well, this was a great example of of someone actually took every single Dota character and compared the marketing text with the description of that Dota character and decided to rate how similar they were. I think they came up with, it doesn't say which top one, but I can't remember which one it is. But amazing sort of response. We also got onto the top post of Reddit Dota 2 page twice, which was pretty amazing. A short video that was featured a lot of the original content that we created with Mercedes, and also the fact that Mercedes did the best thing and they embraced it themselves, and that itself got to the top post of Reddit saying, amazing, you've embraced our passion, we'll embrace you back. Lots and lots of memes, and they obviously appreciated it, and I think this was a great example. Someone identified that the marketing that Mercedes actually got out of this was far beyond what they had ever thought they were signing up for. And that's my favourite. This was amazing as well. I mean, the Dota 2 Reddit page is a pretty sacred place, not quite as sacred as League of Legends, I'll say, but in terms of, you'll just notice at the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see that, but they actually changed the number of people online to the number of grown-ups buying Mercedes-Benzes. And as I said earlier, the fact that Mercedes really did embrace that was the best thing they could do, and the fact that it was continued to talk about. I've got lots of other things I could have shown you, unfortunately with the time. But that was probably the best quote. I was worried that they were going to fuck this up by getting annoyed, but no, they didn't. They turned around and embraced the whole thing. So thank you very much.
We actually have many stations here at our booth, so we're actually standing on our VR station right now.
So I went down to the Bethesda offices in the UK a few days ago and got hands-on with the game to bring you some new gameplay and impressions.
Esports didn't open up until the 90s in South Korea. Eventually that spread across the world and started to take on a whole different meaning, and people started to take them as serious sport.
Pop-off. What is important inside of the Elite Series because it's showing the personality of the players. People love to see that.
So we've got Mikkel here from Face It. We've also got Yvonne over here from HP. We've got Martin from Gfinity. We've got Adam from the Goat Agency, and we've got Shane from HyperX. So I guess first off, do you guys want to maybe just go around and say really quick what you do?
Yeah, so, hello.
Oh, you gotta turn it on.
Hello, love that. So Face It is largest competitive gaming platform, so the grassroots level, even if unfortunately we were not on the slide from ESL. And we're also a tournament organizer and content producer, both on our own and through different joint ventures we have, for example, with ESPN in the States and MC Universal. Sorry.
Hi, so I'm Yvonne from HP. So I think most people in the room will know who HP is.
It's a source, isn't it?
That's right, Brandon. Oh, I've not heard that before. So we launched the brand Omen about 2.5 years ago, and so I head up consumer marketing. So that's my baby that I've launched within this space. Our goal is to basically help gamers become better at their game. We do that with a number of areas of marketing, but esports being a key one for us. So our global goal is to become the number one brand within esports by 2020. So that's a big task. So yeah, we're doing a lot around this. I think I talked to most of the people in this room about esports.
Martin White from Gfinity, the UK's leading esports company. Also not included on James's slides. In fact, Michaela and I have got a deck of our own which doesn't include them, so we'll just so we obviously operate our own series in terms of the Gfinity Elite series. We run a lot of partnership stuff for publishers all around the world and commercial brands, and we operate Europe's largest dedicated esports arena.
Hello everyone, I am Adam White. I head up the esports and gaming division of the GOAT agency. The GOAT agency was BT Sport, a young agency of the year last year, and we're the #1 influencer marketing agency in Europe. We're a little bit different. We don't represent talent. We have a database of 40,000 influencers. So we help brands, in my division, we help brands use the power of the esports audience or the gaming audience to sell a new product or a service. And for the sort of endemic esports industry, we'll help, drive traffic to the Twitch stream or sell jerseys or t-shirts or get live ticket sales.
Hi, I'm Shane. I'm the brand marketing manager for HyperX EMEA. I think we pretty much, our parent company is Kingston Technology, so I think we kind of work with everyone that's on this panel in some way. So I've sponsored teams like Envy, Cloud9, all the way down to Classroots. We also have just struck a deal with the NUEL over there. So yeah, we support the whole community basically within esports.
Cool. So maybe first up we'll do some targeted questioning, and then we'll open it up to a bit more broader stuff, and then we'll open up to you guys afterwards as well for some Q&A. So maybe Shane, start with you. You guys have just celebrated your 15-year anniversary. Do you want to chat a little bit about how your brand has grown within the tournament scene in that time, and how?
Yeah, sure. So we've been going for 15 years. As I mentioned, Kingston Technology is our parent, is the actual company. So HyperX is the extreme memory and SSD and gaming side of Kingston. So we actually sponsored our first esports tournament in 2004. I had some pictures of the difference between the tournament that we hosted in 2004 over in Shanghai, which was very conservative. You see that from the pictures, it was very conservative. It was kind of like this room, very silent. And there was no Twitch, so you couldn't stream it. So yeah, we were sponsoring, but the prize pool for that, I believe, overall was 250,000, and the winner walked away with a one of the Kai cars, basically. So it was a great tournament for them. Fast forward 15 years later, and we're still part of the esports side of things. So in EMEA at the moment, IEM, Katowice was our biggest tournament that we sponsored. Obviously, the footfall there was 173,000. We had 2 million views consecutive on Twitch. So for us, just like the esports scene, we've really grown up with them. So it's been a fantastic journey for us. And I'm really privileged to be part of that for HyperX.
Awesome. And Mikkel, you saw in the clip earlier, there was a partnership that you guys did with Alienware, for example, but I know you guys have also done something with NZXT, and you really sort of try to do campaigns that will really speak to the community when you're doing your branding. Can you chat about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry, Yvonne. So with Alienware, I think what we did on ECS was trying to find a way to integrate them in a very natural way that was organic to the community, and it wasn't just slapping the brand on our graphics or on a desk. So what we did, like starting from the studio, you can barely see it here, but one of the requirements was to have like some sort of branding in the studio, and one of the things that characterize ECS broadcast is the very let's say friendly, homely feeling of the analyst desk. So as you can see, like it's a It looks like a living room. We have a melon table and so on. So having a brand there didn't feel natural, didn't feel like properly integrated. So what we proposed instead was to create a neon sign on the back, which is based on the Anywhere logo, and that worked out really well because it really resonated with the community. And then we had to create some specific segments in the broadcast, and again we tried to start from what the gamers care about and what's really adding value to their experience while they're watching the show. So we created a segment which is called GG, Powered by Anywhere. And GG means great game, and it's something that gamers use when the match is over. It's a form of courtesy that the gamers use, and this segment in particular was built by trying to create a segment where the analysts are breaking down the game in an innovative way by utilizing in-depth stats and data that we're pulling directly from the game, and we dedicated to this segment specifically. So we built like 3D custom animations around this branding GG Powered by Anywhere, and we did a technical integration to pull the data from the game and have dedicated statistics that are published on the broadcast and are completely branded around Anywhere. So this way, obviously, the branding feels a lot more integrated and natural, and it's actually adding value to the fans and the viewers that are watching the broadcast, rather than just slapping a 30-second commercial or a brand or a logo on a desk or in the background.
Awesome. And Yvonne, we saw the Next Gen Athletes a little bit over there. What has that done for your brand, that partnership with Omen?
So the Next Gen Athletes, if I just outline what that was. We did that right at the end of July, and I mentioned earlier that our global goal is to become the #1 brand within eSports, which is, I know, a tall order. And for me in the UK, I could see that the eSports scene was kind of underdeveloped. We had to do a lot more work to get it to where we wanted to. Plus we were launching a brand new range of products. So we decided to kind of take a bit of a different view on it, look at kind of some thought leadership in the area about kind of telling the story about this next generation of athletes. That word athlete in its own right generates kind of a massive amount of debate. So what we did was we kind of created the video that you started to see. It's just shy of a 4-minute long form video, which we kind of called a documentary about telling the story through a shoutcaster's voice about the next gen athletes and actually what they go through on a day-to-day basis to become top of their game. So the stars we had in there were some talent from Team Infused, a kind of a big esports team in the UK. Shoutcasters, we use doctors, kind of sports psychologists, even a hockey coach to look at the differences between an esports athlete and a kind of traditional athlete, if you like. So we had table tennis, we had hockey, we had looking at the differences between the sports, just start a debate around it. So we launched that at a really cool event in Shoreditch, in the Village Underground. A few of you were there, thanks for coming. And mainly to the actual industry, because Omen being a new brand, we were very much keen to kind of put ourselves on the map that we were serious about gaming, we were serious about esports. So we wanted to kind of show people that we were serious and invest in that area. We ran a kind of Twitch live stream on the homepage of Twitch with a debate about this subject with a multitude of talent, some from the guys from Gfinity, some from the team, the sports psychologists and the shoutcasters, to create a little debate around it. We then worked with a media partner, so we worked with PC Gamer to actually help push that out. They pushed that out across a multitude of their channels, obviously PC Gamer being a key title for us to reach their audience. We had quite a few influencers on site, We had a really good time as well. But that kind of story started there, and then we evolved it and we pushed it out. It was a UK campaign selling the story about the UK audience and that this next generation of athletes was coming. And we then took that out through Europe, and it's going into a global kind of view now. The video is really cool, and we created snippets of that. What we've then done is kind of evolve that on to kind of say, not only do we want to elevate UK esports and help that scene because of where it is, we actually, we wanted to look at how we can get people into the grassroots levels of it. Last Friday at the Golden Joystick Awards, we, on the pre-stream, announced that we were going to create a boot camp on the street. I'm looking at Twitch over there, to basically allow people to come in and almost get that opportunity to understand what it's like to become a real pro gamer and get hints and tips from those pro gamers. So watch this space in terms of how that's going to unfold. I will keep talking, so tell me to stop.
Maybe we'll hand it over to
yeah, it helps. Our brand.
Awesome. Speaking of content, if you want to pop over to Martin, I know you guys do a lot with content like Top of the Pop-Ups we saw, or Elite Cribs. How do you think reaching out as far as lifestyle and pulling lifestyle elements into esports and sort of going beyond just the game or the competition, how do you think that helps in developing the brand?
I've always been a big advocate of telling the stories and shining the spotlight on the actual people themselves. And it's something that we've been, at Gfinity anyway, been a big fan of since day one. And if you go back to one of the first points that James made in his deck around community and being authentic and talking in their tone of voice, what's actually really interesting is when you look at that core audience and that core fan base, and you start to try and investigate how best to grow that group of people and how to attract new people to it, you actually, when you distill it all down, it comes down to people, and it comes down to stories, and it comes down to narrative. So that's become a real core part of our strategy, is to actually dive into the lives of the players themselves, be them the cool stuff like Top of the Pop-Offs with this lunatic who dances every time he smashes someone at a Street Fighter in the Elite Series every Friday night at the arena in Fulham. Please come down and see me for tickets afterwards. We have a bar, it's free, there's beer, it's cool, it's like this, but not as nice. Anyway, the point being is that a big part of our strategy is actually diving into those particular stories and shining a spotlight on the personalities. Because one of the things that we've really learned is that in order to grow that audience and in order to make what you're producing really interesting to brands, is to bring the people to the fore, because people actually buy people. It's the reason people watch X Factor, Strictly Come Dancing, that god-awful show that's on at the moment, Dennis Wise in the Jungle. People are just interested to see what happens and understand what people's stories are. So when we're doing fun stuff like Top of the Pop-Offs, or we're telling stories of Team Infused's Sean, who goes by the name of I'm Still the Daddy, that spent 2 years in prison and playing Street Fighter kept him out of trouble, it's really, really engaging content. What we've learned is that it also helps strengthen viewership. So for the longest time, esports content has been game, break, placeholder for some amount of time with a countdown, come back, another game, repeat. What we've tried to do is develop as much of this content as possible to supplement the actual gameplay so that people watch for longer, which actually then is a more interesting metric for brands. So, and this goes back to when we first started, and I look at James Duffield of Twitch here, when James used to run Streamgasm. So these guys used to make some really, really cool content. It was all fun, it was all humour based, but actually what really, really worked is that people watched it and they engaged in it and they talked about it, which actually is something we've tried to sort of carry forward. But we've got some money now, James, so it's much better produced. I'm joking. But the whole content piece, I think, is in my opinion, the most important thing currently, and the biggest opportunity that exists in the esports industry to grow the audience.
So content, over to you, Adam. So Adam, you do a lot of influencer marketing. Obviously, they create content around games. We saw a little clip for the launch of Prey there, which isn't necessarily esports, but do you think there's a difference in influencers in, for regular gaming versus esports, and what are some of the pitfalls that maybe IPs or brands need to watch out for if they're trying to bring influencers into their campaigns?
Well, definitely they're different. I mean, pro gamers are the best in class at... Is this working? Is hello? Yeah, okay. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, pro gamers are the best in their class, whereas a Twitch streamer might just be hilarious. You might have a nice crossover like Dr. Disrespect, who's both hilarious and amazing at this game. Sorry, what was the second half of your question in terms of, what's the difference between esports? What's the difference between esports and gaming?
If there's a difference between getting influencers involved in regular gaming versus esports, is there a different approach that you have to use to get, to reach those different audiences?
Yeah, I think your messaging just needs to be authentic. That's what everyone on this panel will preach to, and most of the people in this room. It's all about authenticity. So, I've seen some really poor activations where they'll get a gamer to advertise a product that he's never going to use, he doesn't know anything about, or I've seen some agencies pitch, well, let's get Reckless to advertise the new Call of Duty. Sorry? I'm not actually saying that Reckless did that. I'm just saying.
We'll have Q&A later, Ben. You gotta wait.
As an example, you get a League of Legends player to advertise a Call of Duty. That's not going to work. So you need to have an understanding of what are they selling, what does this person usually talk about, what do they pitch, what's their tone, are they funny, are they 22 years old, are they 16 and they're not able to drink alcohol? You're not going to try and sell Corona with a gamer who does that. So yeah, I think as well, if you're a competitive gamer, then you're going to want to be pitching certain types of products, maybe performance enhancing products or even energy drinks, things that make you sort of cooler. Whereas if you're maybe a little bit more funny or personable, or you're, say, a university student who's about to make a big purchase, like a new mattress, like a Casper mattress. Does that help anyone? Or a Visa. Then so it's just about knowing your audience, and more importantly, probably knowing their audience.
Cool. So let's open up a little bit. Besides, you guys who are obviously doing well in the branding space, can you give some examples of maybe creative activations that you've seen? Or other brands who are really doing well in the esports landscape now? Open up to anybody. Jump in.
I'll jump in. I think that both Casper and Visa are pretty clever partnerships. You've got, everyone knows the demographic of gamers. They're like 16 to 35. Well, let's say 16 to 25. So people who are about to make a bunch of big, important life decisions, like I'm going to university, I need a mattress. I'm about to move in with my girlfriend, I need a mattress. I'm going to get married, I need a mattress. Or a credit card. I'm about to move in with my girlfriend, I need a credit card. So you're following SK Gaming, and they're kicking butt, and you're like, oh, cool, these guys are sponsored by Visa, they must be good, Visa must be good. And how many people in this room have ever changed their bank with a credit card? Anyone change their mattress? But change the actual mattress, not change your bed sheets. But yeah, those are two that I think are pretty cool.
Great.
I quite like the partnership that Astralis did with Audi before the ED Counter-Strike Major last year, which for Audi was a test. It was like, okay, let's dip our toe in the water, see how we get on. They went on and obviously did incredibly well, and they've done this massive, fully integrated partnership, which looks like it's really cool, which I think actually sends a really strong message, or should send a really strong message to kind of marketing directors and budget holders out there that are a little bit either lack the education or are a little bit frightened of what dipping their toe into esports might mean. Is there are multiple examples now and case studies now of non-endemic brands that are actually succeeding. Audi are one, Casper's another, Visa's another, Gillette's another, Mercedes, yeah, exactly, is another. So it's what's quite frustrating, and I'm sure that James, Mick, any tournament operator or anyone who's trying to monetize what they're doing at the moment will testify to, is that there's a big fear factor with for non-endemic brands anyway. There's a big fear factor about getting involved with esports, and it's now actually it's become quite lazy, because
there's enough data out there. There are enough amazing case studies that are supported by, you know, auditable statistics, some rich content to enable people to take that first step. And you know, as you start to see these brands do that, you know, there should be no excuse now why others can't follow. And there was an interesting debate on Twitter the other day about whether, you know, the number of ads that were being run either before or during IEM Oakland, which, you know, actually if you look at it commercially was completely fine. Some people were kicking off about it, but I think talking about the journey that eSports has come on, you know, that James was talking about right at the beginning, you know, it's now at a point where it's bigger than it's ever been, it's more stable than it's ever been, but in order for it to grow, it has to be commercialised. And so the audience are willing to accept brands, they're willing to accept being sold to, provided it's done in an authentic way, it's done in their language, and they don't feel like they're being patronised. I completely agree with this, it's online. So for marketing directors and agencies out there that are thinking, actually, do you know what we'll do is we'll go and spend the money on Premiership football, Premiership rugby, or anything like that. Actually, what you should be doing is checking how much of that money is actually wasted, as opposed to how better it could be spent in eSports.
So speaking of, you know, sponsor spend, how do you guys work out what that spend should be?
We call Yvonne, and we say how much you got, and she just, you know, yeah,
but I think especially for non-endemic brands who are trying to get into this space, you know, how do you convince them that this is something they should be getting into? How do you work out that spend?
I don't know about the other guys, but the approach that we try to take is, well, more often than not anyway, the approach that we try to take is to understand what the outcome is. I think if you can sit down with a brand and you can understand what it is they're trying to achieve, whether that's a net increase on sales, whether it's just, you know, some sort of soft association numbers, whether it's, you know, engagement through social media, I think that the credible place to start is by understanding what it is that a brand wants to achieve. When you understand what it is, when you understand what it is they want to achieve, you can then track back, calculate back to actually what it is, what the kind of campaign it is that you can build to help them achieve that, because everything's bespoke. You know, the stuff that Mercedes wanted to achieve would be completely different to the stuff that Yvonne has wanted to achieve over the course of the year. And without understanding those goals and without understanding those desires, you don't really know where to start. Because like Mick quite rightly said, you know, the days are gone where you could just slap a logo on a stream, ask for some cash, someone sends you some kit, and away you go. Because the industry has progressed at the rate that it's progressed, and production levels have increased to the level that they are. You know, putting a tournament on and creating the content and broadcasting it is more expensive than it's ever been. So actually, and the audience is bigger than it's ever been. So you can actually provide more value, but you can't provide that value until you know what it is that someone wants to do.
Just also answering that from a brand. When I was getting into esports, I had no idea how to evaluate it either, and so kind of I think my first entry into it was ESL, and then a bit of Gfinity, and we now sponsor a bit. We sponsor the Elite Series, and you know, my brand objectives were very much about that, associating with esports, but building a brand, actually driving awareness. You know, associating a really cool product with a really cool kind of sport. And so, yeah, Martin and I definitely did sit down together and understand what my budget was, where these guys were going. And the Elite Series was brand new at that point, and these guys didn't necessarily know fully what it was going to do. And so it's about also building kind of strong relationships with these guys, kind of, you know, taking a leap of faith in some respects, and you know, hoping for the best. And the Elite Series luckily has done really well, and it, you know, the earned media that we've got out of it, that we're just about to launch a content strategy with Double Tap over in the room to tell some stories about the players within that, so we're not just slapping our label all over everything. Definitely these guys are very approachable. They're kind of one of the best industries that I've worked with in terms of trying to kind of make things work. You know, and just sit down and kind of work it out together.
So last question before we open up to you guys. Oh, Sophie, go ahead if you want to.
I just want to say something. I'll keep it very brief. I think my experience is like working with the non-endemic brands is that there's basically two axes they use to evaluate opportunities. The first one, which is the most important one, is the risk factor, like what's going to get me fired, basically. And if you're like, if you work for a CMO of a Fortune 500 company, you have TV, which is a very safe bet. It's very expensive. It's very low return on investment. but it's super safe. You're not gonna get fired. Then you have a digital advertising, like more traditional sense, so programmatic, Google, Facebook, buying Twitch pre-rolls and so on, which is the bit riskier bet, but it's still acceptable. Like even in a 60-something years old mind of CMOs, starts to be accepted. And then you have esports, which is something that will surely get you fired, basically, but has the highest return on investment. And it needs a lot of effort and a lot of work compared to all the other options you have in the spectrum. You can't just go into doing esports activation as you approach like doing a TV campaign or doing like a digital campaign. It doesn't work that way. You need to spend a lot of time understanding the space, talking to the companies in the space, understanding the community, thinking about how you want to approach the community and what your goals are and how you can achieve those goals. And it really takes a lot of risk and a lot of investment from a time and resources standpoint in order to activate properly. But the people that manage to do that successfully have a much higher return on investment than any other type of campaign you can do towards this type of a millennial audience.
Oh,
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
Just to add from the Hypex angle, sorry. So we do actually work with a non-endemic over in the US, the 76ers, which is a huge NBA team. So I think from our point of view, they're doing the whole league of 2K NBA, and the sponsorship with that has been fantastic for us, because not only are we able to introduce them to the esports side of things. Obviously they did take over Team Dignitas, but we're able to put our brand out there into the mass audience as well and kind of educate them on who we are as well. So with that kind of partnership that we have, we're actually able to, basically it's a mutually beneficial agreement, which is something we are, I know from the US as well in HQ, as well as myself here, we're constantly approached by non-endemics, and you can basically, they'll come to you with a presentation and you can see through the BS straight away. They either want to just do a quick activation to reach your audience, or they'll actually commit to you, and they'll actually commit to esports. So that's something that we personally as a brand look at. And so far, we'll see how it goes to the NBA. It looks positive. I saw some pictures from a recent game and we were all over the court, so that was fantastic. We'll see what happens in the future, but so far so good.
Cool.
I might as well chime in as well. Everyone's talking, so.
You don't all have to answer each question.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, mine's really quick. So, from an agency standpoint, and this is going to be totally pitchy, but it's fine. If a brand or a publisher comes to us and says, what's our reach going to be? What's the activation going to look like? We're a bit unique in that we'll guarantee metrics. So we'll say, what are your KPIs? And okay, we want clicks, impressions, shares, whatever. We'll say, okay, what's your budget? And then we'll come back to you and say, these are the targets that we're going to hit. And if you don't hit them, then you don't pay. Or if we don't hit them, then you don't pay. And we haven't missed. So, yay for us.
Cool. So last one from me, and then while you guys are answering, we can pass the mic, is because esports is such like a global phenomenon, is it important to have that global footprint as well if you're a brand and reach out to different regions and cultures and that kind of thing? Or do you try to focus in one space? What do you guys do?
I'll take that. So I think, like I was saying, global brand, we're investing in esports all over. When I got the brief a little bit, I felt like, esports is, compared to my European counterparts, is kind of smaller. The mix of consoles and PC is different. We absolutely had to tailor our approach for the UK, to help people get involved, to help elevate it. The reason I'm here speaking today is to help do that. And so my counterparts in Korea have it easy. And so, say that as well. but it's very different, depending on how developed esports is all over the world and where it's going to. I think what we were about to see in the next, for me being in it, I'm still quite young into esports, and so like over the last year, everyone will say how much growth and change there has been. over the, what I'm already seeing is kind of looking into 2018, what is going to happen, and it's phenomenal what I'm hearing about investments, things that are coming, and so, go for it, guys. That's all I would say.
I think just from the HyperX side, it's kind of, you have to tailor it, because not every game or every game genre is popular. So, you've got mobile gaming over in Southeast Asia, which is blowing up. We're slowly starting to see that come through to the West. Obviously, you guys have all seen PUBG just explode everywhere. We just had the PUBG tournament over at IEM Oakland, which went fantastic. So it's kind of, we have to look over the market and basically target specifically which countries and actually tailor our approach. Because if we just said we're going to do one slapstick approach across the whole of the globe, it just would not work, and probably we wouldn't be as successful as we have been within esports. So yeah, it's something. It's not a magic stick, that you have to do a lot of research. And luckily, being like we've done the 15 years, I call it research actually, because fortunate for us, and a lot of these guys here, we've actually grown up with the industry, so we've been able to do activations and been like, oh, okay, that's not worked, so let's try something different. Whereas I think, some of the non-endemic brands that are coming in now, they don't have that luxury to fail, because the community they can call you out very quickly. So I think, the 15 years research has put us in a really good stead for the future.
Hands for maybe stand up.
Okay, yeah. Hello, Rob here. Look, really interesting panel. Now, I produce one of our main sports talk shows on the BBC, but I also develop a game, which we hope the eSports community embraces and becomes the next Rocket League, and brands come and speak to us. But anyway, that's another story. But the question is, do you, with your crystal ball, do you see a time when the top eSports players, the eSport athletes, are as big as Usain Bolt, Roger Federer, Lewis Hamilton, who we went to see at Mercedes yesterday at Brackley? When might that time be, and what needs to happen between now and then for that to happen?
I think it's fair to say that their stock is rising, and I'm not a big fan of comparing things like that, but I think that's absolutely fair to say that there are already individuals around the world who garner the same sort of attention as major personalities in more traditional sports. What the most exciting thing is actually trying to think about where the next superstars are, because you won't find, there isn't a Cristiano Ronaldo or Roger Federer at age 7 or 8 that the football or tennis world don't already know about. But you walk out the street tonight, you might walk past the next best PUBG player, the next best Rocket League player, the next best player of your game in the world, who could go on to be the biggest esports athlete in the world. That's the most exciting thing. And what's actually, I think, really, really important is actually what kind of things are happening to help provide a platform for those guys to be discovered. But are we going to get to a point one day where those people are held in the same regard and they have the same fan base and they're mobbed to the same degree? It's already happening. It's only going to keep growing.
I think it really depends where you look. Definitely, UK is not the most advanced country from that standpoint. But if you look at Asia, for example, a player like Faker in China has, in terms of there's these questions about his potential salary, and it's comparable to one of the top players in the Premier League. We're already talking about that level. In terms of fame, in Korea during the World Cup, there's a famous story that the coach of the Korean football team called a famous StarCraft player to the changing rooms to motivate the players because they used to see him as an idol, basically. So that's already happening in certain parts of the world. But even like closer to us, if you go to Sweden, for example, where there's a huge culture for certain games like Counter-Strike, for example. It happened to me to walk around Stockholm with some professional players, like Counter-Strike players, or going to bars and so on. And you will see that there's tons of people that stop them, they ask for autograph, they want to take pictures with them, and they're really recognize these people on the street, not at esports events or gaming events. So we're definitely moving in that direction. Even like if you compare, League of Legends or CS:GO player salaries, which I would argue probably these two games have the highest player salaries at the moment. Maybe they're not comparable to Premier League, but if you take pretty much like any other professional sports in UK or in Europe, most of these players are making more money than professional athletes in these sports. So from a financial success standpoint, we're already there. From a, let's say, fame and celebrity status standpoint, I think we'll get there. We'll take a bit more time. Most of all, because it's still like it's a very large niche. It's not mainstream yet, but we're getting there, and we see it already in other countries and other regions.
Okay, another question?
Yeah.
First of all, Deb, I'm really sorry, my question is going to sound really similar to your last question, but I promise you it's a little bit different. Because there's a lot of brands in this room that want to engage in esports, potentially for the first time. I'm sure a lot of them are blown away by the statistics and the numbers of how big esports is and everything else, but I'm sure they benefit from hearing from the panel about when their objectives are purely country specific, when they want to target, say, just the UK. And again, that doesn't mean there could be a small company, that could be just a Tesco's, or that could be a Ford who only want to promote one car that might only be available in the UK. So what are the tactics that they could use that would help them still achieve their goals, but ensuring that they're not wasting money reaching people in Malaysia?
So, for example, at grassroots level, there's a very sophisticated targeting mechanism that can be used. So there can be competitions that are specifically focused on the UK and they're cater to a UK audience, and some of the more grassroots community competitions as well can be geo-locked as well. So only players from the UK, for example, will have access to specific competitions or even see specific competitions online. So definitely that's a way to do it. It's a bit harder when it comes to, let's say, bigger competitions and content, because like when we talk about international tournaments, obviously the audience is very international, but at the same time there are some good example in terms of content that is specifically focused on the UK market, and I think that Martin and James can speak better to that.
I think one of the important things is also how the content's distributed. So you just really could work with the Twitch guys to target a specific nation in terms of the audience, or as you start to spread how your content's distributed. You look at, we did some interesting stuff with BBC Three through the Elite series, which generated some interesting numbers and some interesting things to talk to brands about in terms of the UK. There's always a little bit of bleed, because one of the best things in the world about esports is there are no boundaries. You don't ever want to lose that. That's one of its unique selling points. But you go into that with your eyes open, and it makes right. The bigger the tournament and the bigger the stakes, the more global the audience. So you will naturally lose people to Malaysia and Papua New Guinea or wherever. But there are, I think by understanding again exactly what it is that a brand wants to achieve, if it's just literally trying to lock as much of that budget and as much of that spend down to be targeted to a specific audience like the UK, you can focus on UK tournaments, UK teams, UK players, and UK content distribution channels that actually try and ring fence it without wanting to ring fence it.
And just finally, just from so I think if you want to target a specific market, bring it back to language. There is always going to be bleed. So the UK will always flood out into US and Nordics as well, because they consume so much content in English. But if we do an activation in Poland, we always look for influencers that just speak Polish. We also look for influencers in Romania that just speak Romanian, just so that they can absorb that content. But like you said, there's always going to be a bit of bleed across regions. There's a huge Polish community here in the UK, but they're going to pick up on it. So language does help a lot in order to ring fence that as well.
Maybe last question?
Hi, it's Joe from LG here. From Mark's question, on the kind of UK specific side, we can kind of tell that the UK is a weaker esports market. It's very strong console base. With 5 business leaders being on stage, what would you like to see from the UK government from it in terms of legislative help to help the UK esports scene start to grow and prosper?
Nothing yet. I'd like them to leave it alone for a little bit. Just purely because you're right, the UK scene is underdeveloped in comparison to sort of some of the more major territories. But for me, that creates the most exciting opportunities. That we've often referred to the UK as a sleeping giant of esports, and we stand by that claim. One of the reasons we created the Gfinity Elite series and the kind of Challenger series beneath it was that we strongly believe that there is unbelievable talent in the UK that deserves to operate and perform and compete against the very, very best in the world. But without a starting point for participation, you get nowhere. And you need freedom to be able to, and flexibility to be able to discover the best way to bring that talent forward. What we don't want to do is have too many pairs of arms wrapped around it, trying to control it and trying to limit how that can actually be achieved, because it will stifle it. So as valuable as governmental support and legislative, hate that word, support is, I think the best way to do it is obviously through people like UKIE. The British eSports Association has been set up to find the right path, and it's not to rush. So there will be a time when the right support is needed. But for me personally now, it's just about, if they could do anything, it's about becoming as educated as possible, staying as close to the communities as possible, which is obviously the theme right at the start and is absolutely bang on the money, and just take the time, and the time will come when we need the support, and we'll be able to call it out specifically at that point, I think.
Cool, go ahead.
Yeah.
I would just say, fixing this Brexit nonsense would be enough. Making sure that this country doesn't become isolated from the rest of the world. I think that would be a good goal to achieve.
Yeah, agreed.
I
think maybe something that could be interesting is maybe the Ministry of Education invest in esports as a conduit to academia. So I think there's been a lot of innovation in a lot of different industries in the last 200 years, in all industries, right? But we still have a teacher talking in front of 20 students. Not all of those students are good at exams, not all of those students are good at written tests. And obviously kids love video games, they're quite engaged. So I've seen, there's a company called the Enemy of Boredom, and they do really cool work in getting disenfranchised kids to get turned on to career paths like publishing or business development or becoming a pro gamer. And maybe if the government would support something like that, it could be cool. Rather than, there's all this stigma about esports and gaming, right? It's like a bunch of nerds in their parents' basements smelling of World of Warcraft. That's not what it is. So, maybe being a little bit more abrasive of it rather than, so, what the hell is this?
Awesome. I know there are more questions in the audience, but we're about to move into a break, so this will be your chance to go accost the panelists and chat to them and ask your questions. And then we'll be back in about 10:15. Thanks, guys. Thank you, panelists. We're going to kick off with the last part, which is looking at some of the future opportunities in esports. So we're going to have our very own Tony Yang chat about the mobile space. We'll also hear from James at Bitstack, who do a really cool billboard in-game type of activation. And then we'll also hear from Benoit from Fnatic, who do some really, really cool stuff as far as brands go. Woo! And last but not least, we'll have Mark Cox from Riot Games telling you all about... We have one semi-enthusiastic, woo! Yeah. Cool, so without further ado, Tony, come on up.
Thank you. I'm Tony. I'm a product owner at Space Ape Games. If you're not familiar with us, we're a mobile game studio, primarily kind of mid-core games. We're based in London, about 110 people. Today I'll be talking a bit about mobile. So if you look at the gaming ecosystem over the last 5 years, The two highest trajectory phenomena have been the ascension of mobile games and esports. And the question that's always been asked in the gaming industry is, will these things converge? Will they feed off each other in some way? Will they intersect? I'd say, like, maybe if you look back before 12 months ago, the answer is clearly no. I think if you reference James's now legendary pyramid, mobile esports would have definitely been in this grassroots, pro-amateur phase. But in the last 12 months, things have changed a lot, and it's due to a lot of things. Our devices are getting better, our networks are getting better to address latency and stuff like that. So that's created new opportunities. So I'm just going to talk through some signs that mobile esports is developing as a trend and could grow to be quite as big. You always want to marry the reach and the diversity of the mobile gamers, combine it with the depth and the passion of the esports community in some ways. Hopefully, I can kind of show you how those trends are emerging at this point. So if you're a brand marketer, this chart's probably pretty familiar to you. The green line is online advertising on mobile as a platform, whereas blue is the desktop. So obviously, the last 5-6 years, mobile has overtaken desktop and online spend. So obviously that's fundamentally due to the amount of reach and so on and so forth. So obviously mobile is always going to be a very viable platform. Sorry, this is a lot of numbers. This is basically showing the total global forecasted revenue on all gaming platforms around the world. So around almost 110 billion in 2017, and in 2020 is projected to grow to about 130 billion. So if you take about that 20 billion in growth from now till 2020, about 18 billion of that is coming from mobile. So very big upside remaining on mobile, and as mobile gets bigger, all the ecosystems are more likely to form bigger communities and maybe unlock esports. So one big kind of known trend in the mobile space is Clash Royale. It was kind of the gold standard in competitive PvP gaming on mobile. So this tournament's actually next week in London, next Saturday. If you're in town, go check it out. It's in Stratford. Yeah, she'll play a short kind of trailer video for it. But basically, it's a 1v1 mobile game played around the world. They offered a $1 million prize pool for this tournament, and it's all culminating to this one day in London. So yeah, this game's made by Supercell, one of our partners, and yeah, they're really kind of pioneering this phenomenon on mobile. Here's a quick promo of what that looks like.
This is what it has all come down to. Here we go.
Yeah, so exciting hype video, sizzle reel for that tournament that's coming. So Supercell, biggest gaming company on mobile. And not only do they have this game, they're also launching a new game that's also going after kind of a mobile competitive ecosystem. It's called Brawl Stars. Currently soft launch, only available in Canada. But yeah, it's a 3v3 mobile game. So yeah, biggest mobile game studio has 2 games that are really trying to push this initiative. And they're, yeah, again, trying to be pioneers and unlock this opportunity. Space Ape as well is looking into it. A lot of big studios are pushing on it. So that's the West. It's still quite early for esports on mobile, but if you look to China, it's already very, very established. This game's called Kings of Glory. It's actually the biggest game in the world in terms of revenue on any platform. They do about 400 million a month just on this mobile game. But it's big, 80 million DAU, 400 million a month. And there's this big ecosystem of pro players and a big community as well. So if you want to look ahead, maybe China has got there first, and the West there needs to be a good game on the West that unlocks that same opportunity. Other big companies, not purely game related, Amazon holds this Champions of Fire Invitational. There's quite a few more casual games that they offer here. But yeah, big American tech companies also really pushing the growth of mobile esports as well. G Fuel, just a sponsor of also a mobile tournament. So yeah, Critical Ops is the first-person shooter, Clash Royale, Vainglory as well. So yeah, it's still pretty early. You know, it's in 2017. It's not fully formed yet in the West, but you can certainly imagine 2018 these things will get a lot bigger. So overall, to summarize, I think there is a competitive ecosystem emerging on mobile. It's definitely very, very much established in the East. On the West, it's still developing. The biggest names in mobile gaming are really pushing and driving that effort. I think it's going to take a really great game for people to unlock that opportunity fully. And once that is unlocked, you get the benefit of, if you're a brand advertiser, you can target a much more diverse set of players as you're reaching mobile gamers, which is a very different demographic from PC. So yeah, given the vast reach on mobile, I think the ecosystem, once it takes off, it'll go bigger and faster than even on PC. So this is maybe looking into the future. Today, if you're interested in brand marketing, definitely your best bets are League of Legends and the Dotas and the Counter-Strikes and stuff like that. But around the corner are these other trends, and I just want to surface them to you. That's it. Thank you.
Right, so I'm James Draper, founder of Bidstack. We're probably the most sort of raw company of anyone talking today. Went live a whopping 11 days ago with Football Manager 2018. So what do? We basically, our platform is a web-enabled platform that enables you to go on and buy basically in-game native billboard space within Football Manager 2018 and also Football Manager Touch 2018 as well. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're up to with Football Manager, longer term sort of ambitions, but on top of that, I also want to sort of give you a bit of sort of a route through our journey of how we've actually got to this point, because we started off actually in a different industry to this. We actually started off in out of home, which is traditional digital billboard space. So basically, we started a company in 2015, came into that space, into digital billboard, looking to try and democratise that market. So working with the likes of Jason & Clear Channel, Exterior, and the guys who own the digital billboard assets across the TFL network, etc. My background is primarily in FMCG, so I was working quite closely with the guys over at Eat, Itsu, these sort of lights. And I kept seeing those adverts you see on a tube, the ones when you're coming out of it, the McDonald's adverts come out, go right, 100 metres up the road, and then the restaurants up there. Kept thinking, from the data we were seeing from the till systems, particularly the stock systems, we must be able to do something a bit more intelligent than that, based on stock levels due to time of day, weather, and such like. So look to go into that market, create an open platform that basically allowed you to identify a certain audience you might be looking to target, create an advert within the site, and then start to look to sort of pick billboards off the back of that. So coming into that space, we had to be quite aggressive, did some very aggressive sort of initial marketing, did a very expensive video initially, which completely ripped off Dorothy, probably have seen that on YouTube. And then we did some slightly more sort of strategic moves as well to make sure that we were sort of scaling the guys all the way from sort of Oxford Circus all the way around Warren Street, all the agencies. So we started to sponsor Norwich City Football Club. Definitely worked, made a good bit of, sort of definitely disturbed a few people in and around that. Went live in December 2016, did 2 days worth of alpha testing, worked with the guys at Prime Site, Clear Channel, some of the sort of smaller media operators as well, pitch side LED billboard space, worked with AEG on some of their assets around the O2 as well. So we had thousands of ad buyers sign up to it, and it was a semi-successful sort of launch period. We managed to sell some space to get new people into the market. That was really sort of the aim, to try and sort of democratise that particular space. So that's David, who's one of our users from our initial sort of launch period. But it turned out actually, it's probably worth sort of covering it. it was a political minefield coming into an established market like out of home. There's a lot of money sort of sloshing around in a certain way, a lot of people doing very well out of it. The opportunity which we're sort of bringing was definitely going to sort of take someone else's lunch over a period of time, so that didn't go particularly well initially, so we just kept sort of eating away at it, but what we started realising actually was that the main issue when it came to sort of out of home is you've got such a finite number of billboards that the risk reward ratio, when we started seeing it, you need to get 75% occupancy penetration through the market to really sort of make the numbers start to work. So it felt far too risky. So when we went live in December, we actually stopped just after December the 15th, pulled the site down and sort of took stock, see who signed up to the site initially. And luckily, we had a lot of interested sort of parties from all the sort of slightly mad activity we were doing initially. So we had football clubs come to us looking to try and sell their pitch side LED. One of the top 5 Premier League football clubs want us to sell their pitch side LED assets all for this Premier League season. Looked at, it was very interesting. AEG as well looked at doing all the sort of billboards within the MLS as well. We started talking to those guys, which is again very exciting, huge opportunity for us potentially. But it was actually a previous conversation that happened over quite a few beers at a mate's party. We ended up talking to a quality tester who happened to work at Sports Interactive, Football Manager. Started pitching him 5 drinks in about the idea of like selling that LED sort of pitch side perimeter billboard space within the game, and started asking him like what type of data you could extract based on the gamer, what time of day they're playing, what sort of peaks, troughs, average hours of sort of gameplay in certain months, which ones were busiest, and sort of interesting territory. So we started talking about it, and it became quite clear that actually there was like an opportunity there. So I'm absolutely humbled to sort of admit that. So I think it was three weeks ago we actually signed the contract. Now I'm actually over there, completed the contract for us. Thank you very much. We had 3 sort of household names from the word go. It gave us a bit of stability in the marketplace straight away. So kind of we can say it's first mover advantage when we started looking around at what platforms actually were out there that you can go and buy in-game, native to the environment, non-obtrusive sort of billboard space within video games. We started looking out, kept hearing the name Massive Inc., which I know any of you guys are sort of familiar with, so came across those guys time and time again. There's some agencies out there, Rapid Fire, Reloaded, part of Rapid Fire, came across Playwire, but there was nothing really that was really sort of nailing it in terms of really sort of native to the environment, agnostic to game sort of platform. So literally ditched out of home, went full into the gaming space. Don't need to, we keep getting different numbers actually on these predictive graphs of how big the market could be, but it's a $100 billion plus industry. We definitely agree on that. Large revenues than the film and music industries combined. And what we sort of really actually were really flattered about, dealing with Miles Jacobson over at Sports Interactive and the Sega team as a whole, just so willing to work with us, which is fantastic. The way they were selling the billboard space at the moment was literally a case of 2 guys internally, Tom and Lee. I don't know if you know those guys over there, but they've been literally just cold calling, trying to sort of get brands on board, which is absolutely ridiculous. The amount of stuff else there to deal with. So we said, look, we've got a system that can talk to the video player. Just give us all your screens exclusively, and we want a multi-year period. So we agreed a 3-year exclusive arrangement. Exclusive means that they can't go elsewhere. We can go to multi-game beyond that. So start looking at, okay, a starting point to give us a move into the space. Football Manager's very solid sort of base to start building a company from, which was a great starting point. We could actually prove how many adverts actually were played with within certain time periods, who saw the advert, how many times they saw it, occupancy levels. We could really start reporting accurately, which is fantastic for us. So also, part of the reason I think we managed to come in the back door for this, the FM Cup, the eSports sort of first attempt. They ran that last year, very much done on a budget, but still got 60,000 viewers watching the final of Football Manager, which is not bad, you know. I find it very dull viewing personally, but what we started seeing is that the longer term play for us and where I feel actually we can sort of win out. I look at you look at the entire sort of advertising landscape, so particularly if you're dealing with the guys over in out of home, it's the price is the price. They pretty much name the price and have to start negotiating down. Depending on who you are, you get a different price. The great and exciting thing I think we've got with the in-game advertising actually is we can start quite low, and then we know that demand is there, so we can start building from the ground up, which is quite rare compared to other industries. So we can be quite authentic, open. We can actually report based on everything that's going through it as well. And on top of that, actually, as we further and further move towards sort of AR, VR is obviously getting a fair amount of push again at the moment. When you start going more deviceless, as an advertising sort of media overall, you're looking at Facebook ads, Google AdWords are absolutely catchable the moment we start getting towards that point. And I can't find a better industry for us to start off in terms of a gaming environment. So you can imagine very much from my sort of point of view where we're sort of looking to go. The further we go down the road, the more we go down to sort of multi-game possibility. We're looking to build out a platform. We've already started actually 2 versions of it that allow us to go sort of multi-game. So you load up the audience, area, target, budget, and it just allows you to sort of agnostically across different games, different platforms, start serving in native advertising across different games, which is very, very interesting, exciting. Make sure as well, we've kind of, the way we like to look at the business as well, we've got to make sure we are looking after the gamer, making sure we're not ruining that immersion. It's like listening to you guys earlier sort of talking. I'm learning probably more than most in this room. It's very much about protecting that experience, protecting the artwork, and we're sort of working very carefully, more cleverly, with the guys over at Sega in particular to make sure that we only serve the right content based on the right competitions, and play it out very slowly and carefully and cleverly. Oh God, Jesus Christ. Okay, so let's skip that then. Right. Okay, so what I think what was quite interesting is that actually the amount of inbound inquiries we've had in the last few days. So we're working with Carabao, who are partner with Chelsea. They're looking to do Chelsea-focused advertising, which is what you sort of mentioned earlier on, in terms of real-world and in-game sort of blending that. We're working with some other guys who are partnerships actually through Norwich City, who are looking to do real-world activation and such like as well around it. 30 seconds. And on top of that as well, the great thing about Football Manager in particular, we can actually sort of do rewards for the players based on player activity, based on player success within the actual narrative of the game. So if you get promoted as Norwich City, we can actually allow advertisers to target you in the game within your emails based on your success and offer you, as the manager of the game, a level of some sort of activation as well, which is quite exciting. Right, fine? Get with. We're done. One more thing, right? One more thing. Come on, I'll get off yet. The one other thing, the interesting thing for us, we're talking to a number of the guys in and around sort of the football environment from sponsoring Norwich. It's a bit of a punt, to be honest. Initially, it's known it would just intimidate a few people in Mediaville. But what it's turned out is actually we started talking to the guys who do the green screening of billboards within La Liga. So when I was seeing these guys talk earlier, what I really find is, it's my final slide. What I find particularly interesting is if we get to the point where we can start to really monetize the viewer, not streamer, wrong word. Make sure we actually monetize the viewer based on where they're sat, time of day, and demographics around that, and then also look to split that with the real-world clubs, the publisher, and the streaming service. Now it's quite an interesting piece to start from as well. So we're already started working on that. So good. Right. Pass over.
If you don't know Fanatics, so you know we're an eSports team, we are, and as we like to think, but other people think as well, we are the coolest eSports team, and we are the biggest eSports brand in the world. It's not you, Omen. It's okay, ESL are pretty cool, it's okay. But also, really about how we live the future of sports and entertainment, all hustling like crazy and working like crazy. That's why I'm tired and I look like shit right now because we work all day. All these guys, they just do like small deals and toast us, we do the real work. But we really, so it's hard, you know, when you think, because we talk all about esports people and gaming about, oh, it's the future, it's hard to say, but it's true that it's hard to say because us, we are daily into this thing and this hustle, and then you go and see a new brand or non-endemic, like, it's a long time for them to understand how exciting this is, how it's the future, why it's so relevant for them and their brand, and if they don't want to die, they need to come. But it's a long process of selling it in and making them understand. I talk fast because I know she's putting the pressure on me. But our thinking, and my personal thinking, but I'm very radical in the type of things and the way I think in life. I think if brands, the non-endemic brands, if they want to stay relevant in the future, they need to come and work with us because we're all about what's happening in the future for sports and entertainment. And of course, Fnatic is the best brand to partner with because we're already living in the future. But the thing I wanted to check is because, but that's where my presentation is falling down and my whole act is bullshit. Because I think it's very funny, you know, the brands and agencies, they always talk about, oh, let's do a bit of big data. So, you know, it's big data 1 year, last year was VR, next year is going to be AR, it's about Bitcoin or whatever bullshit. And I wanted to say, yeah, you see, all these bullshit things our agencies talk about, we actually really do them. Because we are already in the future and a lot of innovation comes from gaming in general and esports now because we are like the most like, we have the entertainment side around it that gaming didn't have in the future. But, so all these bullshit keywords, I did something funny but it didn't work. So I wanted to go over these 5 future trends or future bullshit keywords that people talk about, and actually I'll show you how it's actually a part of our life already. And that's why we're in the future, I need to join us in the future. So I asked my colleague who's got a very good English accent to make some voice over this. So the first bullshit keyword is
augmented reality, also known as mixed reality, AR. Or the next super big exciting thing.
Very good English accent, this guy. So this is already, so yes, personally I think it's going to be very, very important platform shift with augmented reality, and I think that the future, it will bring physicality to esports in some sort.
HD mixed reality headset available now.
Yeah, with Microsoft. No, it's VR, it's not, you call it mixed reality, but it's VR what you do.
It's mixed reality. It's not VR at the moment.
Debate after, okay. So for example, Riot, so these guys, they've done something super mind-blowing, you know, at the Beijing, at the Nest already, okay, eSports event at the Nest in China, 80,000 people, so you realize it's quite big already. But what they've done with the Dragons, only streamers could see, but you can imagine in the future if this is implemented, it's going to be nuts, like football stuff, it's like, okay, come on, go home. And so this is, no, but really it's super, super exciting. I wasn't there, and also people in the stadium didn't actually see because it was augmented reality. But the people on stream, they were all like, whoa, the dragon, it was nuts and super well done. I don't know who's done that for you, but super good. And so us, we're looking into it as well. So we're working on something actual early next year, but we're building a virtual stadium for Fnatic, because by the time we can build an actual stadium, it's going to take some time, so might as well do it virtual for now. But I think so, yeah, it's going to be very interesting, this bullshit trend, which is not bullshit for us, because it's going to mix virtuality and physicality. It's going to be interesting if you mix it with face mapping, so maybe later on in the replays, you'll be able to have the actual face expression of the players like, with the characters, so you can bring some more emotions in the game, into the replay experience. For the audience, it's super interesting because they can see more than just the game, and actually Riot are doing something cool with the AR app where you can go through replay, so this is Riot, they're pretty good, these guys. And just in general, mixed reality, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be interesting for the whole entertainment industry, and Apple is betting big on this, but it's in 5 years or so, so we have time. Second bullshit word.
AI, also known as artificial intelligence.
It's very sexy word, this guy. So this is just, so, you know, AI, it's a whole big thing, but first, most of the AI stuff happening today is happening thanks to NVIDIA, not to HP. Because they're building the GPUs that are making all of this machine learning and neural network possible. An example, so we use artificial intelligence in game for a long time, but like, that's not the same type of AI, but recently another demonstration at the International in Seattle, they OpenAI bot beat a pro player, beat him pretty well. So that's another example of how, you know, it's already being used in esports and into gaming, whereas other brand or Procter & Gamble, oh, AI is the future, and they do nothing with it. So what could it do for us? It could do training bots for our players, some pretty decent ones. We can, with all the data tracking, we can, we were talking about this with Casper, but monitoring sleep and data and try to optimize our our players' lifestyle for gaming. Good for coaches and analysts to have some predictive tools, because if you can do some machine learning around the team's performance and how they use the players, you can predict stuff more. And then there's fantasy leagues already, but if you actually have like AI character based on real pro players, would be more interesting maybe. Third one, but it's not very anymore, so I skip it. So e-commerce. E-commerce. So this is not really a trend, but so e-commerce, of course, everyone does e-commerce, but us as Fnatic, we only do. Actually, we have a shop, so we don't only do e-commerce. But we are born online, so we never talk about digital budget or digital marketing. We just do marketing and budget. Most of it is digital because we are born inside. But what's very cool with e-commerce and what we do with our online platform is that you can link products and special release and think in terms of limited edition to link it to moments or some emotions, but that's the same for any sports team. But us, we did it pretty well with this. And the whole principle of loot boxes, which is completely alien for any other brand, but for gaming, there are lots of debates about this, but the fact that people buy virtual items, they don't even know which one they're gonna get, and some streamers spend hours streaming themselves opening random boxes is pretty cool and pretty weird feature, but future-oriented. Also what Twitch is doing, and we saw with Debra, so they're doing the Amazon Twitch extension thing, where if a streamer is online and is 8 hours in front of you streaming and wearing a t-shirt, you can do one click buy and buy the actual t-shirt he's wearing. So all this type of stuff is going to be interesting because we are born online and all of this is interconnected. Third one, so this is for you. Virtual currency, so if you work in eSports, I guess you got the deck about ICO or whatever, Bitcoin, to create your own thing. Recently, who got the deck from a scam artist like this recently? You got the deck? But you're a scam artist yourself. And so just say, I'm French, I like to be provocative. So just saying about all this thing about, honestly, I don't understand shit about Bitcoin and ICO, ICO, I don't even know if you say ICO. ICO is a pretty good game. But it started in World of Warcraft with the mining and the Chinese farms and stuff. So what's interesting is, again, it started there, now it's coming. So if anyone can explain me what this is about, because I received a lot of texts about creating the Fnatic ICO, but I don't know. But what I know is that if one day this becomes more than a scam, eSports audience will be the first one to actually adopt it, and we're thinking about it like really, but for now we don't know what to do with it. And fifth, okay, sorry, I'm sweating like crazy, I don't know why. Okay, so just the fact we talked about it, influencers and stuff, but what's blowing my mind when I talk to players, but more streamers than players, because players, they're like sports people, so you're used to this type of profile. But streamers, and I realized that when I was at TwitchCon, Twitch changed their life, but for real, it changed their life. Like some of them used to be pizza guys or whatever, and they started to work out, because you can never get anywhere unless you work out anyway. And have a schedule and stream, find their audience, do the content, and try something different. And now they make a lot of money, of course, but they work a lot. And these guys, their job is to entertain people online and to create stuff for their audience. Then, of course, they become brand on their own. You can make merchandising with them, you can make content, lots of stuff. And wanted to show some quick examples of what we've done in terms of endorsement. So, a good example is JW, one of our really cool Counter-Strike player. He's doing full sellout tweets for Monster, but he does it really well. So when everyone got Monster Gaming in there, everyone plays good. Yes, I think it's very good. The other one is Reckless. So we did one quick activation with him in Adidas. They did a lot of other big, real sports people in their activation for their new Zedini hoodie, which is a cool hoodie. But we got Reckless with one picture, and at the end of the campaign, even if Reckless had way less followers than some of the big sports people, because he's using Instagram for real, and because he's been having a relationship with his audience for so long, in terms of engagement rate, we were #1 of all their campaigns, and we killed it. And another example we did with, so maybe someone knows Anomaly, the weird streamer? So Anomaly, very strange streamer. So we did a partnership with him because we like to partner with very distinctive personalities. Because Fnatic were about going further, and we're kind of a cool brand. So we're not afraid to partner with weird streamers. Whereas HP or other brands maybe are a bit afraid, I don't know. And I stopped the brushing, so it's not very anymore. But with Anomaly, so we did one video of an unboxing of what we did, but the thing, he spit on our product in the video, so I don't know if you want this, but us, we're okay with people spitting on our products. And once he released his video, then our customer support were like, what the fuck, guys, you just got 1,000 messages in the 10 last minutes, like, what did you do? And we're like, oh, shit, we forgot to tell you he's done this video. And everyone was asking for the mouse, but we were saying, and in 10 minutes they got 1,000 messages and some insults because his community is quite hardcore. But now it was super big success, everyone is happy, and we're making a full merch line with him. And so it's interesting as well with this kind of new entertainers, how you help them as well develop their brand and do something bespoke for them, not just put your logo up there. And so yeah, for this, what's interesting, so it's the future of their job, their brand of their own. And they have a really good community, super engaged, but each one of them's got some specific triggers you need to understand in order to make it entertaining and lucrative. That's an English term? Yeah, lucrative. And that's it.
When we look at Riot, we look at eSports, we look at partnerships, we look at some very specific things. I'm going to go through that. I'm not going to be hard to say about League or hard to say about Riot. It's more about what we look for in our ethos around partnerships and branding, and how we approach our game as a whole. Now, when I talk about it as well, it's going to be more reflected at the UK, so there will be some international examples as well, but ultimately, I'm here representing the UK, and it's a little bit of a different scene to maybe China, Korea, NA, or even EU LCS. So what do we need from a brand in eSports? So this is our mission when we kind of think about bringing a brand in, and I'll read it back, but to align strategic, high-value partnerships with League of Legends that reflect the values of Riot, the player, as in the player who plays our game, and to have an invested interest. This is the most important thing, growing and developing the competitive scene. I personally don't want to have any partners involved with our brand that hasn't got a long-term vision to be looking at how they can grow with us and the scene, whether it's from the grassroots, the top of the pyramid, all the way through for multiple years. We look at our game as a game that will be around for generations. So my son, who I took to the Fnatic Bunker on Saturday, we bought some shirts, so thank you very much. I want them to look at League in the future and see it as a game for generations. They played, I played, their kids will play, and brands that will come along that journey will have an amazing resonance with that audience as it transitions through generations. So just a couple of examples, some really great brands that are integrated with League, and maybe some other brands that have integrated with other FPS titles, like for example Monster, big, not only in League, but there's like Call of Duty as well. But the good thing about these guys is, we talked about it all the way through tonight, they're not badge slapping. The way they look at their integration is very unique, and I've got a couple of examples here as well. So Coke, phenomenal. We've been with these guys for many, many years, and when they integrate with eSports, they do it on a massive scale, and that can be the things like with our viewing parties, we have cups in the cinemas, and they integrate very deeply then with social media as well. Phenomenal activations in places like Korea at Worlds, we do a lot of on-pack, and again, just really great partner to work with, and they really leverage their global scale to bring to the mass market that message around eSport, which is fantastic. This is an example of a local activation, basically in Australia where I was working previously with Riot, and again, Red Bull was a great partner of ours, and we spent a great deal of time with them around content, and that's what we're really interested in, putting our players in different places and having great fun with them outside of the game. And the examples here is, we got them to build a billy cart that was corky, and they did the billy cart race in Sydney, and they rushed down, and it was the guys that took part in the All-Stars event. So it was 5 guys from different teams coming together, build a billy cart, race it, and then take part in the All-Star event later on. So it had a great relevance to the audience. I also stuck them all in an aircraft to make them throw up prior to All-Stars as well, just to take them out and push their limits. So again, putting eSports pros in different situations, generate really great content in alignment with Red Bull. They're not putting a logo all over it, it's using their network to develop really great content to support our events. And what's great about these guys, they got involved with the League of Origin, and in Australia, the State of Origin is a massive rugby tournament every year, and it runs through the year in different kind of splits. And they have each of the major states competing. So we thought, well, let's do our own League of Legends version called League of Origin. And they've now got on board with that and supported that fully as well. So content, they sponsor the Chiefs, they help drive events, but ultimately they're not there just putting a logo and doing on pack and doing the simple kind of FMCG approach to sponsorship. Great example of Spain. Anybody that works or knows about LVP, LVP runs Superliga out in Spain, and again, their scene is huge. They did an amazing job of growing from the grassroots right to the top. Their scene is incredibly strong in Spain. It's probably the biggest in Europe now. Outside of the LCS, their players just engaged so deep. And it's incredible when you go to the events. And what they've done is they've integrated some phenomenal brands. Orange now sponsors Superliga. And again, a great example of how the telco comes in. They use their network to provide extra content. They use a network to provide streaming. And again, players can identify very clearly that as a mobile device, and that's how they consume eSports on a regular basis. And again, a great integration. Another local one from Australia is talking about how you bring a brand in that will then sponsor the OPL, so the Oceanic Pro League, is Hoyts, which is their biggest cinema chain in Australia and New Zealand. But what we want these guys to be is our official eSports viewing partner for us. So every major eSports event, they put it on in every cinema across Australia and New Zealand. Players went along, got their show bag, came together as a community and had an amazing time. They met with people who had a like mind, they met with league fans, but again, Hoyts put that on, Hoyts integrated that, but they created this amazing community event that extended their brand beyond the sponsorship of the OPL. And then announced today, the LCS teams obviously announced today for Renee, and one of those is the Golden State Warriors team, which is the Golden Guardians, and again showing how traditional sports is now beginning to take a step into the likes of team sponsorship and team building around leagues like the NALCS, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of these as we move forward into the future. But it's great to see them looking at it in a really cool way where they're not necessarily just putting their brand straight on there, they're creating a separate brand that has resonance with the audience outside of necessarily the traditional brand of the Golden State Warriors, but they're building their equity around it, and they're using their training, their intelligence around sportsmanship to really drive a really cool, great new organisation for the LCS. So what do we look for in a brand? So we look for culture values that are aligned to Riot, and that's really important. They're going to be aligned to Riot and aligned to our players. We're looking at the screens, my eyes aren't good enough to look at that. High level of interest in eSports and gaming. If they haven't got that and they're not invested, then really it's a difficult sell. And it always is the case when you meet a brand or a partner that they have one individual who's super passionate about gaming, and that's the guy that ignites the passion within the rest of the business and shows them the vision for what they can achieve through partnership with eSports or gaming, full stop. Thirdly, must be level up to any existing partner. So I always want to better the partners we bring in and help us invest more, give more back to the teams, allow those teams to then grow further, allow the teams to grow further. More investment allows us to do that. And also aspirationally aligned to our players. And I was talking to Sam about this in the break, and I'm going to say it anyway. The Mercedes stuff I love, and I think it's fantastic, but I still struggle around the affinities to the player, and an aspirational brand is so far out of reach for the demographic that we look at within our player base. So I think it's phenomenal. It legitimizes eSports. But is it that product that I'm going to go and buy? No, maybe not. But maybe Nike would be a better aligned brand where I'm going to wear that on a daily basis. But again, horses for courses. So what we're not doing, right, is we're not chasing billions of dollars for dollars' sake. So I would turn away a brand if it wasn't aligned with our players and with Riot if they offer me $10 million, because ultimately it will disenfranchise our player base. So we are not chasing dollars for dollars' sake. We're not selling our IP or selling out. So there's been some great examples in the past of where we've done things that probably weren't right for Riot. So we did a Kentucky Fried Chicken promotion in China where our champions were out of the game environment getting fat eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. Is that good? No, probably not. So it's just that there are things where you should not overstep the mark and look and protect the IP and be incredibly guarded around our IP, whether it's for eSports or actually in the game. We don't want to expose players to non-affinity brands as well. We feel that disenfranchises them and also makes them feel like we're selling out, and I think that we've got to be authentic all the time. And we're all players at Riot, so that's a good thing. And exposing us, and overexposing the integrity of our channels. So we're not going to allow our partners to post on our Facebook group or our Twitter channel. Those are places where players come to learn about the game, learn about eSports, not about, hey, go buy this, bollocks, no. It's only about the stuff that they want to read. It's the players want to read about other players, read about the game. That stuff can be kept separate. The way I look at this, and I was going to put silly kind of gauges on what was the bottom of the top left quadrant. So when I look at brands, right, everybody read The Human Brand. It's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, it's phenomenal. But they look at brands versus warmth and competency. So if I think of Riot, and I'm going to blow smoke up our own arse, but we probably sit in this top right quadrant, okay? We're very competent, and we're also very warm as a brand. We'll talk to people, we'll engage with people, always talk to players, but we're also fucking good at our job in delivering an amazing experience for players in the game and in eSports. So when I look at brands, I want to align them in that top right quadrant all the time. I don't want anybody down here. But I use this as a kind of a personal gauge to kind of look at it. I put the brands on here and I show it to the team. I say, what do you think about these guys? And they will align or not align. We'll use that as kind of a sense check and a guide. But and again, it comes from a book called Human Brand. Give it a go. It's a really interesting read. So what's next? So BAM deal's been talked about tonight. So BAM deal is a deal we signed with MLBAM last year. So this is about monetizing content. And again, we talked about how you become sustainable. And the reason we've done this is to allow teams to become sustainable and to have an ecosystem that won't just be here for a year, 2 years, it'll be here for a lifetime. So the money that comes through BAM, big proportions of that get reinvested back into the teams so they can become sustainable. If we keep to grow the bubble further and further with all these big numbers that are being floating around the screen, at some point it will go pop. So we need to be very, very realistic and keep it under check. So always keep things sustainable and always flow it back into your players, your actual ecosystem, and keep it sustained. So for us, obviously for the things like LCS and EU, NA, Championship Career, LPL, BAM will be incredibly powerful. And powerful for players as well, because they'll get an enriched and enhanced viewing experience. They can still go and watch on Twitch, they can still go and watch on YouTube, but ultimately we'll be giving them just a slightly different experience to the MLBAM player. For UK, it's different. People have alluded to already tonight, we're in a different position, right? So we're starting from quite a low base. So for us, in terms of Riot in the UK, we're looking at building up from the grassroots upwards. So I have a new head of eSports who'll come in, he'll start working with all the different partners, but we're looking at how we're going to strengthen that pyramid that James alluded to as well. So right from the bottom up to the top, and not just doing a focus on the pro scene, we're looking at how we can build on what we call competitive and social play, where you really get the breadth of their base, that pyramid, to get people engaged in your brand. And for me, and I've said it multiple times in the UK meetings and on interviews, like, I don't give a shit what brand it is that grows the esports scene in the UK. We just need to grow it, and grow it for the benefit of our players in whatever franchise it is. We just need to be a better esports country and have better representation globally. Done. Thank you.
That's right. Awesome. If you guys want any intros or more info about tonight, feel free to hit up either myself or Sam from UKIE. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks so much for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.